this is really about renegotiating the idea of America. And Vincent Harding said something many years ago, brother Harding, who was at Spelman for years, first directed the Martin Luther King Center after Dr. King was killed at Mrs. King's personal request. Then he goes to found something called the Institute of the Black World. He is the one who helped draft Dr. King's Why I Opposed the War in Vietnam speech. Vincent Harding, lifelong Quaker, pacifist, a New Yorker from the Caribbean who raised in New York. Vincent Harding would always say that every generation has to write the history anew. So these statues can't just sit there without being engaged. But the beautiful thing together, let me draw it together. The beautiful thing about the Lincoln statue is we don't have to guess as to what Black people were thinking when the Lincoln statue was erected, because Black people helped pay for the statue, but they had no say in designing the statue. So when they saw the statue, they was like, really? Come on. You know, and people say, well, how can you say that? How do you know what they were thinking? Let's just pick one very significant Black person from that period, Frederick Douglass, because we have his speech. They get there, they're going to unveil the statue, April 1876. Douglass gets up to give what is known as the oration, because, you know, Frederick Douglass. In my mind, when you look at Abraham Lincoln, and, you know, people love to talk, quote, the second inaugural. When you come to the Lincoln Memorial, which, of course, if you know anything about Egyptian history, is based on the Egyptian temples. All of it is that he's sitting there in the temple. I said, how you know? Because I've been to Egypt about a dozen times. I'm telling you right there where that came from. The reflecting pool, the Washington Monument, all that stuff. I'll take you right to the reflecting pool at a Pet Isut that they call
Which is the foundation of the Masons anyway.
All of
the all-seeing eye and all the such and thus.
All of it, all of it. So when people say, well, I always want to talk about Africa and you want to talk about Egypt. Yeah, because you walk around in it every day and think this is something else. We did all of it. But yes, right. So Lincoln, when you go into Lincoln Memorial, he's sitting there and you look up on the wall and you see a long quote from the second inaugural. The second inaugural is where he starts talking about the fact that, look, if God is just, he's going to draw out this blood lash by lash for all these centuries we done had these people enslaved. And so that's how that's used to frame the idea of Lincoln as an abolitionist. But if you erased every speech from that period and only kept one, I would say you keep Frederick Douglass's speech at the dedication of the Lincoln Memorial, of the Lincoln statue, because Douglass reads Lincoln like a book. He gives him credit where credit is due, and he destroys him where he needs to be destroyed. And he says, and he's sitting here looking at this statue, and the accounts we have from the period say he, like other Black people, didn't like the statue. Like, really? This is what we're doing now? No problem. I got this. Because see, I'm at the dedication. No problem. So when he gets up, we won't go through the whole thing. I encourage people to get it. You can get it anywhere. It's around on the internet, so it's no problem. I just like having the book, as we talked about, because when they turn the computers off, I'm still gonna be able to work. So so he gets up, and I love what he does. He's like, we're all here. I love that we're all here. He names the people who are here. He says, we're here with members of the House of Representatives, the President of the Supreme Court, and the Chief Justice of the United States. He talks about all the people. He leaves one person out. This is 1876. Who do you think we would all say is the most important politician in the United States of America at any given moment?
The president.
Exactly. On that dais is Ulysses S. Grant. Douglass opens the speech with shade. He names everybody on the dais, never mentions Grant, who's sitting behind him the whole time. Why? Because it's 1876. And what are we about to see the end of?
Reconstruction.
Douglass's whole thing was, wait a minute, because they were in a debate at this point. They were like, reconciliation. That's what Grant is pushing. Re-election campaigns about reconciliation. Yeah, we defeated the South. I was the general, remember? And guess what? It's time to make up. Douglass is like, whoa. Well, what about Reconstruction? I get redemption, but redemption means we're not in it. How you gonna shake hands with these cats? You were just trying to kill them. Yes, but we're all in the Union now. Yeah, and we in the Union too. Remember 4 million of us? So Douglass is already looking like, Grant, you getting ready to sell us out? Grant pushing back like, hey man, 1870, have you forgotten? We started the Department of Justice. We got the Ku Klux Klan Act. We put the Klan on trial in South Carolina. Douglas like, yeah. Well, I'm supposed to ask, you're supposed to like thank you for that. We freed ourselves. Now let's be clear. These are no acts of charity. So you're talking about reconciliation with the South? Do you understand what that could mean? No, don't do that. And in fact, the thing is so deep. Anyway, we'll talk about that another day, because the idea then is that the North even begins importing some of the Southern ways, some of the Southern attitudes.
Yes.
So Douglas is on the D. It's like, okay, I'm gonna name all these people, but I ain't gonna talk about you yet, Grant, because me and you, I don't know. Little, and then of course we know after what happens next is they really get betrayed in the election that year. Hayes comes in, the federal troops, the last of them are pulled out of the South, and that's when Jim Crow begins to really take off. So Douglas is aware. So he says, okay, but I'm here to talk about Lincoln. So what does he do? My man, Douglas says Lincoln was preeminently the white man's president, entirely devoted to the welfare of white men. He was ready and willing at any time during the first years of his administration to deny, postpone, and sacrifice the rights of humanity in the colored people to promote the welfare of the white people of this country. Then he goes on and he lists all the things that Lincoln did not do, all the things he didn't do. And then he says, by the time he gets to that, he starts with, and this is fascinating, Missouri, when General Fremont came in the early days of the Civil War, got to Missouri, winning battles, he told the Africans in Missouri, y'all free. Lincoln rescinds the order, and he names it there. He says, you know, when he revoked the proclamation of General Fremont, when he refused to remove the popular commander of the Army of the Potomac in the days of his inaction and defeat, that was McClellan, we could talk about that another day, who was more zealous in his efforts to protect slavery than to suppress rebellion. When we all saw this and more, we were at times grieved. He's like, we looking at this guy like, what are you doing? In fact, there's a great song that they sang during the period. Richie Havens remade it. It's called Give Us a Flag. And what does he say? Fremont told us how the war, when the war had just begun, how to save the Union, the way it should be won. But he said, but old Kentucky had its way and Lincoln had its fears. Now they call on the help of the colored volunteers. In other words, he told y'all what to do. Free these Negroes, give them guns. Lincoln was scared Kentucky was going to secede, so he backed up. And then, so the brothers had a song they sang when they went into war. Oh, y'all finally understand now. Give us a flag and we'll defend it, but give us this gun, we'll defend the flag. So that was their marching song. Douglas brings all those memories to the dedication of the Lincoln statue. Lincoln been dead 11 years. Then he turns and he says, but you know what? Here's the stuff he did do. He said he recognized Haiti. Now, that to me is a little borderline shade too, because Lincoln recognized Haiti, the United States government, in 1862, in part because the only black, which is why I like this book, the only black people that Lincoln freed with the Emancipation Proclamation, that he freed on his signature, the only people he freed that he had the ability to free were the Africans of the District of Columbia. And that happened on what they call Emancipation Day in Washington, D.C., in 1862. What Lincoln said was, and Congress, we will pay every white person who has an African enslaved in the District of Columbia up to $300 a piece. We pay you, they're free. Then in the same bill, Congress and Lincoln say, and we're setting aside this money, any of you Negroes who are now free, if you want to leave, we'll help you relocate. Lincoln is like, send them to Haiti, send them to Liberia, because this is a white man's country, really. I mean, look, I don't like slavery. Slavery's wrong, but don't get that confused with me thinking we equals. No, I think this is a white man's country. So if you would like to leave, we've put some money in the bill. So the reason he recognizes Haiti, because remember, Haiti had been freed itself in 1804.
Right.
It's been almost 60 years. Why didn't you recognize them before? Because if you recognize Haiti, you're sending a signal to every Negro with a dream. Gabriel Prosser and them, when they busted up the Prosser conspiracy in South Carolina, put them on trial, these brothers and sisters on the trial bench saying, we were told that if we could burn the armory and get to the port, there would be a ship there to take us to St. Dominique. In other words, the idea of Haiti was just too terrifying to these people. So Lincoln, they finally recognized Haiti in part because they want to send us there. So, I mean, the idea people say, well, you know, we were born in this country, this is our country, you're not going to run us off. Listen, we're citizens of the world. As far as I'm concerned, I would love to have a place in South Africa, Ghana, whatever. And I'm going to keep the American passport because I'm going to come back and see my mom or come get her and take her there. What you're not going to do is restrict my movement on this globe. But this idea that we got to stay here because we fought and died here would seem to me strange to the ancestors who were brought here. Like, what, y'all want to stay here? I mean, if we're going to be honest, let's have a real conversation. So, so Douglas then says, you know, after he says all the good stuff he did, then he says, can anybody really deny how we felt that night in January 1863 when the Emancipation Proclamation went into effect? See what Douglas is doing, he's telling it to us, warts and all. He ain't shading one way or the other. That's why, to me, this Douglas speech at the Lincoln statue unveiling is so much more powerful than Lincoln's second inaugural. This should be the speech that we know. Because then when he finishes reading what he's done and then says how we felt, he said, let me tell y'all something. Lincoln is y'all's man. He's your man because Lincoln was not from the elites. Well, like James Buchanan, who was president before him, who was a kind of patrician. You know, Lincoln was a plebeian, a rail-splitting, self-taught, ambling, all shucks dude. And the reason he was the right one at the right time is because we knew y'all was racist. And you needed a racist to be able to say to y'all, look, if you're going to keep this country, you're going to might have to let them go. Because you couldn't hear it from a straight abolitionist like me or these white dudes, William Lloyd Garrison. You can't hear that from them because you already disagree with them. You need somebody. And of course, we've talked about this many times, and you've talked about it consistently. I mean, imagine if some of these white nationalists, imagine if Donald Trump came out tomorrow and said, look, I was crazy. Withdraw that Obamacare lawsuit. I don't like y'all. Y'all are all N-words in my mind. Y'all niggas don't like y'all. But guess what? I think the country is more important. So you know what? Let's get another stimulus. Y'all send me a stimulus bill for $3 trillion, and I don't want nobody in here who makes less than $40,000 a year to get a check for anything less than $10,000. And all the rent, we're gonna forget. I mean, he would never do it. But what Douglas's point is that you need somebody who you don't think like you think to hold this together, because you're never going to agree on us. So he says, and this is what I love about him though. He says, that doesn't make Lincoln a great man. It makes Lincoln the right man for the time. So we're out here with this statue to do two things. We're here to reinforce the fact that you don't put statues up to make people heroes without their warts. You make statues up to remember what's happening at the moment. And the other reason we're here is because this is your man. And what we know is you're going to build all these statues to him. I mean, this is a century. Well, not a century. Yeah, almost. That's about 3/4 of a century before there's a Lincoln Memorial. This is, he said, I know what y'all going to do. Y'all going to make this man into American Jesus. I already know. In fact, I gave that talk one time at the National Archives. Abraham Lincoln, American Jesus. I said, George Washington is the father. Abraham Lincoln is the son. He died for us. And Martin Luther King is the Holy Ghost. I mean, the idea of the future to come, you know what I'm saying? I mean, but Abraham Lincoln is American Jesus. He's the son of God. If God is George Washington, he's the son because he had to die for the thing to live, to give us the hope of eternal life. So I'm saying that to say that Douglas called that in 1876. He said, but this statue here, if you don't build another one, this is the one we paid for. And I'm going to tell y'all right now, we knew who he was. We know who you are. This is never going to be finished. And then he ends the speech with the beautiful thing, man. It's almost like this dude is looking into what's happening right now. He says, let me tell you about time. Time will reveal everything that needs to be done. So this statue is for today, but in time, we will be able to relook at everything. It's almost like, I'm wondering what Fred Douglass would do today. Would he be out there looking at them with these ropes around his statue? Or would he be looking at them now with the National Guard out there guarding the statue? Would he be saying, you know what? Yeah, it's time. You can take it down. And the only last thing I'll add is this. It's fascinating to me. 1974. This is why, look, all human beings breathe air. I respect all, like you do. We respect all life, all living things on the planet. We good. And I don't like to separate groups out by gender or whatever, but something about Black women. It's something about y'all. It's clearly in the grand scheme of human existence, particularly these last few centuries of our immediate traumas and responses to it. These sisters from the National Colored Women, National Association of Colored Women, the NACW, this is Mary McLeod Bethune's organization, the one Miss Bethune started, right? These sisters say, you know what? think we need a statue of Mary McLeod Bethune. Like, wait, what y'all get ready to do? What y'all get ready to do, Dr. Height? What y'all get ready to do? 1974, these Black women raised money and stick a statue, the first statue of a Black woman, stick a statue of Mary McLeod Bethune in Lincoln Park, on the other side of the park, away from Abraham Lincoln. So you got Miss Bethune and you got Abraham Lincoln. And that's where I would say the tearing down of the Lincoln statue started. Why? Because once that statue was established there in 1974, on her 99th birthday, with 18,000 people there, and the Park Service does, because Lincoln is looking that way toward the Capitol. Miss Bethune looking that way. If you see the Bethune statue, she's standing, she got children around her playing. She's in the middle of this with these young people. So she's looking that way and Lincoln's looking that way. So she's looking that way, Lincoln's looking that way. They turn Lincoln to face her. The park said, you know what? Respect. So Lincoln is turned, you know what I'm saying, to face Bethune. And I'm saying, now in 2020, y'all want to pull this statue down? I think the first move of that statue to get it out of there was when they turned it around to face Miss Bethune. So I'm saying statues are complicated, and I agree with you. They're just symbols, and we really need structural change. But it's interesting to look at the politics of that Lincoln statue in the context of what we've experiencing.
I'm so grateful, because I had a very definitive thought that you've made me have to rethink a little bit in terms of, I'm reading Colored Money, you know, very slowly. And it talks about what you just said was the revisionist history gets inculcated based on what people are allowed to get away with in this time. When we close our eyes, all they'll remember are these statues and these flags and what's written in these books, which is why it's so important that we write our own stories and make sure, when you were talking about Lerone Bennett, that we publish through lenses that look like our lenses, and that the people who are putting these works out into the diaspora, that they have a pure soul as it relates to Black people. And we have to ensure that. That's part of the work.
That's part of the work. And as is this. Now folks know. That's